Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar episode, Core Value Design and Continuous Feedback. We're so excited to get started today. This is something we're very passionate about here at Rabbit. I have a very special guest here, so we're going to introduce ourselves now. So if this is your first webinar episode, you may just now be meeting me. My name is Casey Johnson. I'm the Digital Marketing Manager here at Rabbit. You should know about me that at any given time, I'm about 90% comprised of Doritos and Diet Mountain Dew. I love Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. I'm super excited about the season premiere, which is coming up in just a few days. And then, of course, my passion is continuous employee feedback as well.
Hey, and I'm Alexander Schwall. I'm a co-founder here at Rabbit and a chief scientist. At any given moment, I probably consist from a lot of home-baked bread, which I bake on Sundays and eat it in the course of the week. I really currently watch a lot of West Wing. It's we're simpler times, and I really enjoy it.
Maybe an oldie, but a goodie for sure.
It's old school, yeah. And I am currently really into organizational network analysis. If you have questions about that, let me know. I'd love to talk about that.
That's right. He actually just put out a podcast with the World of Work project. You can find the links on our Twitter and our LinkedIn. It's really good stuff. If you're new to Rabbit, we also wanted to offer a quick introduction. Rabbit is a talent management platform fueled by continuous employee feedback. And we think that feedback can really do some amazing things when it's done well and when it's done effectively. So that's just a little bit about us in case you're new to Rabbit.
All right, so to kick things off and to just basically give you an idea of what we're doing here, I want to start with a simple definition. Usually a definition is really a good way to get started.
If we can pause, it looks like Karen has her hand raised. I want to make sure everybody can hear us okay.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes.
Karen, go ahead if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Sure can.
Sorry. The question that I have is, I can see you guys, but I can't see your screen, your slide.
Oh, thank you for letting us know. Okay, let's do some quick troubleshooting.
Maybe we didn't do that right. Yeah. This thing comes to life when you can actually see us. So thank you for letting us.
Okay, let's see. Okay.
And I think, no, that's just us twice. I think you should share.
Okay, is that any better, Karen?
No, I mean, I see you guys as, and this is weird because I use Zoom all the time, but I was able to actually increase your
my screen
slide deck just a slight bit, but you guys are really still taking up. I don't know if anyone else is having that same issue or if it's just me, if maybe we could ask anyone else. And so if it's not.
Yeah, we definitely want the deck to take center stage, so definitely appreciate you sharing that. Let me see if I can work some magic here.
That's better.
Okay, so now can you see the deck in the big screen and then us in the smaller screen?
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much again, Karen. You really saved us there.
My pleasure. I'll mute myself now.
Thanks. So Alexander was about to kick us off.
All right. So yes, we like to kick things off with a simple definition here, and this is the definition of company culture. And there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in this. And let me walk you through this. We believe that company culture is your employees' beliefs about the behaviors that are rewarded, supported, and expected in your company. So that's a mouthful. Let me step through this a little bit. First of all, the first part is really important. Company culture is your company's beliefs. It is not something you print on mugs and or paint in your lobby. It is really something that only and purely resides in the heads of the people that work in your company. The second part is equally interesting, and that is the behaviors that are rewarded, supported, and expected. So this is really about the elements of, these are really behaviors, things that you do, and people have to have beliefs about what is rewarded, supported, and expected. The nice thing about this definition, it kind of explains to you how to build a company culture. And you build a company culture by putting out behaviors and making sure that these behaviors are visibly rewarded, supported, and expected. And we're going to come back to this a few times. So if you don't catch this all right in the first round, we will revisit this in a second.
That's right. So thinking about the behaviors, like you said, these will help you build your values for your company.
Exactly. So in other words, the behaviors are the values. So a set of behaviors could make up a value, and we're going to show you an example in a second. But then more importantly, all these values are essentially the building blocks of your culture. So the central element, the thing that you can manipulate, are the behaviors and how you reward, support, and expect them. So that's really how you manipulate, how you change, how you shape a culture in an organization. I'm going to give you an example here. So a value, for example, could be being respectful of others' time. So this is something that many companies have. We are respectful of each other's time. So what you see here is a set of behaviors that make this up. And this is something I really want to differentiate. A value in itself is often just a lofty aspirational thing. What we believe and what has worked really well in practice is to break it down into behaviors that are really observable, that you can really see. For example, doesn't send unnecessary emails after hours, arrives to meetings on time and prepared to engage, and shares an agenda before a meeting. When you build your own values, you probably will start with a concept of a value, but then the drafting process, and this is how you write them, is going to be about what are the things that we want to see our employees do? What are the do behaviors that we need to create? It doesn't have to be exhaustive, but it should be a pretty rich set of behaviors that kind of define, by example, the value that you want to create. We had a client that said, you have to bring it every day. That was their value. What does that mean? So this is a value that is really not that easily understood, but if you break it down in behaviors, it may be of value to an employee.
That's right. And as we think about who might be on the call today, some of you may be in a company where your core set of values has been long established for decades. Maybe you're going back into it to refresh, revise your approach to your company values. Maybe you're at a company that doesn't even have the set of values defined yet. So we want to really applaud you for doing this, because as you can imagine, there are several dangers to letting others define your culture. And something that Alexander really says a lot and makes a lot of sense is that if you don't create and drive your culture yourself, others will do it for you. And we have this picture of a dumpster fire, and we do it half jokingly, but it's true, because if you're not the one driving it, one will propagate out of all of your departments. And what you can have there is several different cultures that are different from your sales department to your product team, between your different global offices. And all of these can come out of maybe one person is kind of establishing this culture based on what works for them and what pushes their career forward. So, we won't walk through each one, but there are several reasons why it's important for HR, it's important for senior leadership to really take the helm here.
Yeah, you got to own this. If you don't build culture, somebody else will.
That's right.
Like if you say, we're going to do it in a couple of months, your culture is being built right now, but it's probably not the culture that you really would like your company to have.
Right. So getting into it, thinking about starting at step one, drafting your set of core values. And this is, solid coffee and tea, pen and paper kind of work that you're doing here. Step one is simply asking yourself, what are the big areas of my company that are very challenging for my employees? Maybe you have recognized that innovation is something that isn't a natural behavior at your company. Even if you're something where innovation would be really, really helpful, like a tech company, something like that. Is it a lack of diversity? Maybe there's a diversity and inclusion group. Maybe you have some lofty goals around diversity in 2020, but it's not a natural fit for your company. It's not something that comes to everybody like a second language. So jot those down, jot those lofty goals down. Think about your strategic objectives that the C-suite has laid out for the company for the coming year. What kind of behaviors would support those huge goals that you have for the next year or two? What kind of behaviors have helped the company meet the goals of previous years? So you want to think of these evergreen behaviors that are always going to work from year to year. And then finally, ask others. This can be a very workshop-y type experience where you've got a few people around the table. You're saying, you know, who's a standout in our company? Okay, Mike is a standout. What makes Mike a standout? Okay, he respects everybody's time. Okay, how does he do that specifically? You know, really drill down into that, which is what we can talk about here. So let's think about one of the values that you might want to emulate this year. Maybe for you, we value innovation as something you really want to pull to the forefront. And when we talk about company values and creating that core set, we don't need 20, we don't need 30. I think what's really important is that we settle on maybe 3 to 7 tops, core values that assigns the right level of priority for everybody to understand, okay, we don't have 30 values we have to follow. We have these, you know, this handful that I really need to laser focus on. So let's get into we value innovation. Maybe that's one that you've settled on. We want to think about what kind of observable behaviors support that sort of value. So for instance, maybe it's, you know, Mike really helps others embrace change. You know, we had that huge M&A last year, and Mike was there to, you know, encourage the team, get everybody on the same page, bringing new ideas on how to improve current processes. He always shares new knowledge as he learns it. Maybe there's an intranet, a knowledge base, a forum where all your employees share all the new things they're learning, and he supports timely adoption of new processes. So when you have a value and then you have very distinct and clean behaviors, it's a North Star for your employees to follow. Okay, great, my company wants me to be innovative. How do I do that? Oh, there's 4 very clearly defined behaviors for me to get there. This is also a very helpful exercise when you're going to your leadership and you're asking them for which values, you know, they want to be sure are included in your core set. So as you can imagine, the CEO is going to have a ton of opinions, right? The CFO, everybody's going to say, we need to bring it. Everybody needs to bring their A game. That should be one of our values. As Alexander mentioned, don't be afraid to drill in and say, okay, great, we need to bring it every year. What does that mean on the day-to-day for my employees? So once you have that core set, let's say 3 to 7 huge values you really want to hone in on, and you have the behaviors for each value that you feel very clearly support each value, this is when you can start getting input on that first draft. Go to your internal HR colleagues, go to leadership, also start up some employee cohorts.
Yeah, I would always recommend making sure you have folks from your organization involved, especially people who will be on the receiving end of these values, simply because if this seems foreign to them, if this seems like not something that is invented with them in mind, they will reject that. The key person to involve here, though, or the key people to involve, as Casey already pointed out, is your senior leadership, especially the CEO. So they will be really critical in vetting these, because they control the strategy of the company. They also should be controlling or driving and shaping the culture of the company. That is something that is under the purview of the senior leaders of the company.
So we wanted to offer a quick example of, you know, a well-known company, Schwall, who we feel does a really good job of this.
They really do. Yeah. Just to give you an example of what this can look like when this is done, they did a wonderful job. Very simple. There are 6 basic, 6 basic values that they divvy up into warrior spirit, servant heart, sport. I'm not going to read through all of them. They're on their website. But just to give you an idea of how they work in practice. let's say a associate may have a conflict with a passenger, with a customer, and they are worried and wondering about what they should be doing. There's no supervisor around. Well, they can just remember, I need to bring the servant's heart, and this means that I have to treat this person with respect, no matter how abusive they may be in this moment, and I have to follow the golden rule. I have to treat them the same way that I would want to be treated. Again, it's a guiding, it's a North Star, it's a guidepost for them on how to act in a situation where nobody tells them exactly how to behave.
Help them feel supported when they're standing in front of that customer 10:30 at night,
Right.
don't have their manager right there. They feel fully supported, like they have the company behind them.
Yeah, exactly. One thing to hammer home, and this is just a little bit of literature in case you're interested, these are all studies that indicate how important founders and CEOs and senior leaders are when it comes to culture. So our recommendation really is to make this a process, a initiative that is spearheaded and strongly involves your senior leaders, especially the CEO. The CEO will have an opinion about culture. I guarantee it. They will not be ambivalent around this. Your job is it to basically harness these ideas, these thoughts, and push them in a particular direction. Maybe they come up with the bigger headlines of the value, and it's your job to tease out what are the underlying behaviors. And we demonstrated that a little bit, how to tease out what are the things that you really want people to do. And again, like, we cannot say this enough, the senior leaders are the key people you need to involve.
Right. So moving into the next phase, when you have your draft finalized and you have that alignment, support from your senior leaders and maybe some of the grassroots cohorts that we spoke about earlier, then we can move into action. So of course, communicating, I think, speaks for itself pretty well. There may be various ways that you communicate your core values within your specific companies. We just have some opportunities here. I think the one piece that we would recommend when you're communicating to your employees is make it a push mechanism such that they don't have to actively go and find it. They don't have to go to their handbook, open to page 46 and find the set. They don't have to log in somewhere and find it. It's always in front of them. So maybe it's on the home page of your intranet. Maybe it's at the bottom of HR's email signatures at the end of every email. Maybe it's in your continuous feedback sessions. So if you have adopted continuous feedback and your managers are holding monthly one-on-ones or weekly one-on-ones, however continuous feedback looks for you, hopefully your managers are reiterating those core values and they have a guideline of communicating those core values to their employees so that your employees know exactly which behaviors and values are expected, supported, and rewarded, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah. But going beyond the communication, where people really shape their beliefs about what is expected in my company, what is rewarded and what is supported, is when you demonstrate them. And this, again, is so important. It's so important to bring your leaders and your managers in. If I observe my manager doing something that follows the guidelines, the values of my organization, this is 100 times more meaningful than seeing this printed on a poster or on a mug or a t-shirt or whatever. Communicating is important, but it's only a necessary condition. Demonstrating is really the main mechanism through which you shape these beliefs, because I'm going to say it again, this is where people see directly what kind of behaviors are rewarded, supported, and expected. This is really, that's the key element.
Yep. And then moving into activating. So this is where you can really get creative with how to apply your core values to the day-to-day HR and talent management processes that you have in place. So for instance, the most meaningful and clear way to drive home your company's commitment to your core values is implementing them into your performance management processes. So if people are seeing that others are being awarded merit increases or promotions, and those people have been actively showcasing these behaviors that align to the values, that's going to be the piece that really drives it home to everybody, that it's what your company expects, rewards, and supports. There are also ways where, again, going back to this one-on-one feedback sessions with your managers, if your managers have a guideline of, hey, during your one-on-ones, take 5 minutes and talk about what the manager is hearing from others regarding that direct report's alignment to behaviors. You know, hey, I saw that you took the heat from that client the other day and you really didn't have to. I wanted to commend you for that. That is a perfect example of our commitment to being a good team player. You know, things like that, and really drawing that direct and clear line between the behavior that the employee did and the value that it successfully completes. So that's another way to activate. And then finally, making those decisions, again, merit increases, the promotions, different ways that you reward and recognize at your company, have them a direct line to the clear behaviors that roll up into the values that you've created.
Yeah. Again, just to bookend this towards the end here of our presentation, if there's nothing else you take away today, just remember culture is your employees' beliefs about behaviors that are rewarded, supported, and expected. And you know, just think about how can we creatively show that we are rewarding, supporting, and expecting certain behaviors. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Right. So, and then thinking about, you know, making sure not to derail your own set of values that you've come up with.
Yeah, and this happens so easy, like, right? It's so easy to write these values down, write the behaviors down, but it is always the little things that derail these things, where you immediately and irrevocably destroy all credibility of this, where people say, this is some just basically BS that is coming from management, from HR, and we don't really have to abide by that. So for example, you say, we respect our work-family boundaries, but at the same time, you are sending non-critical emails on a Sunday evening. All of this rings hollow and is meaningless, and people will not abide by these rules. If you're not abiding by them, they will also not, you know, hold themselves to the same standard. There are a bunch of others as well. We respect each other. You know, you basically tear into a person in the hallway and everybody sees it. That's probably going to destroy the idea that we actually really respecting each other, and that's something you shouldn't do. We excel through innovation. We see this all the time. Companies are like gung-ho and say, yeah, we've got to innovate. But then there's no budget, there's no opportunity, and new ideas are essentially, you know, ignored right in the beginning. So this is all nipped in the bud. So people will see this and do this a few times, but then they will realize, okay, this whole value of innovation, that's also not credible. Inclusive diversity, you know, read through them at your own pace here. We think there are a lot of simple ideas of how you can quickly destroy credibility in your own values.
Yeah. So these are, again, going back to some of those ways you can activate with your core values. Maybe your next pulse survey, where you're asking questions to your employees about the company culture that they're perceiving. You can wrap in the core values into those questions within your pulse survey. You can recognize and reward based on those who are living each value, so on and so forth. I think what's really important, again, is talking about performance management. When you're doing a succession planning exercise and you're comparing two folks, and both of them are top performers, they're really bringing in the numbers for your company. Well, how are you going to make that final decision?
Yeah, and this is the hard part, right? But this is where the rubber meets the road. If let's say you have a golden child who's like fantastic and a wonderful performer and tons of sales or whatever the case may be, but the person walks over bodies and uses a lot of elbows, and it's just a very unpleasant individual to work with, what do you do? If you have these core values in place, you probably don't promote this person. Maybe you go even further than that. But the idea is, once you have these values and you can compare people, you don't just compare them on their metric of performance. You include the metrics of, are they adhering to the values of our company? And you make that part of your decision-making criteria.
That's right. And within the deck, when you receive the recap email on Friday, if you open the full PDF that we're going to provide to you guys, we're going to include several slides that we're not going to talk through today, but they show you how it can look when you have a continuous feedback platform in place that is capturing these apples to apples data and maybe is even putting numbers behind it. So, you know, Karen has a 96% score from her peers of really being a great communicator, but Jim, you know, really struggles with that. So when I'm thinking about succession planning or high potential identification, these are the kinds of ways that continuous feedback from those individuals' feedback networks can give you the scoop on what people in those networks are really feeling about each other and saying about each other in an objective way that's easily comparable. So take a look at the recap email. The last thing we want to chat through today, I know we've got 3 minutes left. The last thing we want to chat through is, this is a lot. This is a very, very tough exercise. It's hard. For some companies, it might require change. It might require something brand new that people aren't used to. And we want to impress upon our HR, our talent pros that, you know, slow and steady wins the race. We might be called rabbit, but we understand that it needs to be deliberate and it needs to be a very graceful transition. There's a lot that needs to happen. So number one, protect yourself. It's, you know, have that pat on the back, treat yourself with a lot of grace. This is not an overnight situation that you can push through in a quarter over quarter kind of situation. So it's a process and it's a tough thing, but it's an important thing. So, you know, we're rooting for you, absolutely, but don't feel the pressure to push this thing overnight. It's got to take some time. So again, the steps are drafting, communicate, demonstrate, activate, and giving yourself a lot of grace in the meantime. So at this point, you may be one of 3 types of folks. You might be ready to learn, simply continue learning about core values or continuous feedback. So we have a couple of options here over to the left in ways you can do that. You can compare if you're looking for continuous feedback platforms to compare. We have a link there to our one-sheeter you can download right away. Or if you're ready to do and activate, shoot us a note. We're happy to get on a quick call for you and just kind of introduce ourselves and the talent management platform and consulting that we offer. So with a couple of minutes left, I wanted to open it up for Q&A in case anybody has any questions. All right, going once, going twice. Okay, I don't see anybody, so we're going to go ahead and sign off with 1 minute left. That recap email will be headed to your inbox on Friday, and we thank you for joining us again and hope you have a great weekend.
Bye-bye, thank you. Oh, that's a chat message.
Oh, maybe there's a chat. Oh, thanks, Karen. Thanks, Eileen. Sounds good, Eileen. We'll be sending it soon.
Under more, if needed. There it is.